I have to tell you, right now, that this is such a lie. It's, first of all, 5 billion kilometers. That's how long the trip will be. The liftoff earlier this week, and they made sure that they put in just after sunrise, because it's called dawn. And dawn won't reach Vesta, its first stop, until 2011. And then Ceres, its second and last stop, will be reached by 2015. An ion propulsion system engine. So Dr. John Brophy of JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratories, they call it. It's actually Jack Parsons' laboratory. The occultists I've been talking about, off and on now, for a couple of shows this past summer. He's the one who really founded JPL. Anyhow, John Brophy, Dr. John Brophy of JPL, discussed this past, present, and future of ion propulsion systems during a session not long ago at the Jet Propulsion Research Workshop in Pasadena, California. The development history spans over 40 years. They've been working on these engines for a long time. And it followed what they called a successful flight of Deep Space One in 1998-1999. Ion propulsion has now entered the mainstream of propulsion options available for deep space missions, according to this Dr. John Brophy at JPL. NASA's Deep Space One spacecraft was launched in '98. They said it was successfully completing its mission, tested a dozen cutting-edge technologies, including its advanced ion propulsion engine, it said. The mission ended in September of 1999. Ground controllers were preparing to fire up DS-1's ion engines again, later to begin thrusting toward an encounter with the comet Borrelly in September of '01. So they've used it a couple of times, and they say it has been successful. But to me, when you understand the principle behind it, you almost have to laugh out loud. Asking people, you, to swallow this incredible tall tale. The principle behind an ion propulsion engine is pretty much the same as what you'd experience when you pull hot socks out of the clothes dryer on a cold winter day, NASA will explain to you. The socks stick together or push away from each other because they're electrostatically charged. The challenge in electric space propulsion is to charge a fluid so its atoms can be expelled in one direction and that way propel the spacecraft in the other direction. I want to stop here for a moment explaining the ion propulsion engine principle to tell you that in deep space, it's a vacuum. It is a void. I've been over this before with the fake moon landings. There is nothing in a vacuum or a void to push on. So if ions or whatever comes out of the back of the spacecraft, what does it push against to propel it forward? There's nothing out there. It's a vacuum. Space is a vacuum. There is neither heat nor cold, which is one of the flaws of the fake lunar landings in Apollo 13 in the movie, where they were freezing to death almost in outer space. There is no hot. There is no cold. So if you're about to tell me that the slingshot effect, where you in Earth's orbit get enough speed going around and around and around so that it goes so quickly like a marble going around in a bowl, in a plastic bowl, and then all of a sudden it gets going around so fast because you're spinning it around in the edges, like the motorcycles you used to see at the X going around on the wall, then it would fly out. And that's the slingshot effect that NASA has said that they've popped to other celestial bodies with. Well, there's no way you can control the direction of where it flies off to. So how can you, as they say they have already done with an ion propulsion engine, a rocket, slip in between the rings of Saturn? Absolutely incredible, but true. These guys have actually said that that's how they have gotten to Saturn. So if there's nothing to push against, how do you do like NASA has just explained? Go to one celestial body, orbit it, then leave it and go to another and hit the exact spot that you want. You see how far-fetched it is? It is science fiction. It's brainwashing. It's absolute black magic spells that NASA casts. And I know I have been called NASA's worst enemy, worst nightmare. But with things like this, it's very hard not to laugh right in their face. The ion propulsion fuel used by the experimental Deep Space One spacecraft is xenon, a gas that's more than 4 times heavier than air. When the ion engine is running, electrons are emitted from a hollow tube called the cathode. These electrodes enter a magnetic ringed chamber where they strike the xenon atoms. The impact of an electron or of a xenon atom knocks away one of xenon's 54 electrons. This results in a xenon atom with a positive charge, or what is known as an ion. At the rear of this chamber, this tube, this cathode, a pair of metal grids is charged positively and negatively, respectively, up to 1280 volts of electricity. The force of this electric charge exerts a strong electrostatic pull on the xenon ion. When the ion engine is running, xenon atoms with a positive charge shoot out the back of the engine at a speed of about 100,000 kilometers an hour, about 60,000 miles an hour. At full throttle, this ion engine supposedly consumes 2,500 watts of electrical power and puts out just about 1/50th of a pound of thrust. That is 1/50th of a pound of thrust. That's far less than the thrust of even the small chemical rockets kids play with. But NASA insists that the ion engine can be made to run for months or even years. The tiny constant thrust adds up to substantially reduced flight time. And as you heard from the article that I read from, Dawn will reach Vesta, its first stop, in 2011. And then Ceres, its second and last stop, at 2015. But here's the catch. NASA is still working on being able to get these engines to last at least, forget about the thrust, 1/50th a pound, are having trouble getting these machines, these ion propulsion engines, to run any longer than a year. So I just thought I'd bring that up to you tonight to show you how incredibly gullible they think you are. And then there's probably someone out there that actually believes that this could be happening and has already been happening, and that I'm handing you a bunch of bulk that we've already gone to Saturn and slipped between the rings. It's absolutely incredible what they think we'll swallow. It's the Spaceman coming back with more on AM 640 Toronto Radio with controlling of the masses. Tonight's topic on A View from Space. The guy that called space. This is AM 640 Toronto Radio. And I brought up the NASA Dawn spacecraft that's blasted off earlier this week on an unprecedented double encounter mission to the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. It's going to take until 2011 for the first stop and then 2015 for the second stop. Now, that to me is absolutely ludicrous. Absolutely and totally ludicrous. Especially when you understand that an ion propulsion engine emits 1/50th of a pound of propulsion out the back. And in deep space, where this mission supposedly is headed, is a vacuum. There's nothing to push on. And even the slingshot effect, if you buy that, does not work in outer space accurately. I mean, you can throw something out there and it will keep going and going and going in the void of space. But you can't direct it any direction. Let me take a call. Paul, you're on AM 640 Toronto Radio. Go ahead.
Thanks. I just have a question.
Yeah, so do I. A million of them.
I just want to know, how far is Mars, the exact calculation, or from the Sun, the exact or nearest calculation from the Sun, if you know?
You're talking about kilometers and miles?
Yes.
Okay, here's another thing. Here's where the brainwashing happens.
Uh-huh.
How do we even know there are other planets out there? What you do at night is go outside and look up and see the stars, correct?
Yeah.
But in the schools and in the universities, they name these little lights out there, and they affix all kinds of information to them.
Yeah.
There are supposedly 9 planets in our solar system.
Yep.
Well, I've never been out there to see any except for us.
Oh, I know.
And so this is what I'm getting at, Paul. You're a young guy. What grade would you be in?
Sorry?
What grade would you be in?
8.
You're in grade 8.
Yes.
So you would already pretty much be indoctrinated into what we call our solar system.
Uh-huh.
Well, how do we know that that's correct? You know the story of Galileo and Copernicus?
Yeah.
These were the guys that one said the Earth revolved around the sun, and the other guy said the sun revolved around the Earth. How do we know which one is correct?
Yeah.
Because we've never been out there.
That's true.
And so that's all I'm getting at. That's all I'm driving at.
Yeah.
I suspect that it's concocted because of the names that they have chosen to make gods of family members and name planets and stars and constellations after them.
Yeah.
And that I don't believe any of it is really true.
Oh, yeah.
As a matter of fact, I'm having a tough time believing that everything revolves around the sun.
Yeah.
You know how they say Toronto is the center of the universe?
Yep.
Well, just what if the Earth was the center of the universe, Paul?
Yeah.
Just what if?
I know. What if?
So it's all according to your beliefs.
Yeah.
once you get in through school,
Mm-hmm.
I know whose belief you're going to have, don't you?
Yes, I do.
You're going to have theirs.
Of course.
And I'm just going to get into that in this next hour.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to get into fraternities and the history of those fraternities and how people, when they go through college, come out with not ideas of their own,
Yeah.
but ideas that are put into their head by science. And science is not a done deal. The science is never in on everything. There's always more to learn. Always more information comes out
Yep.
as we progress that will take what we used to believe and debunk it. Throw it out. Call it a lie. Call it whatever. Call it we were misinformed.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll change our opinions.
Yeah, that's right.
So you see, that's where schools come in. That's where colleges come in. That's where people who want to control the flow of information control the education system, control the control the books, control the publishing companies, control the flow of information, and you control the people. Thanks for the call, Paul.
Thank you.
It's a Spaceman on AM 640 Toronto Radio. Talking about what our perception is, because you see, this is everything these days. Perception is everything. How you perceive things to be. Take the global war on terror. There are a lot of people who say, what global war on terror? It's your perception. Also, another one that falls into this category lately is climate change, global warming. It's all about perception, how you perceive things to be. If you can control the information that people see each day, when you pick up a newspaper, you control that. If you pick up a book, if they pick up a book, you control the publishing companies, you control that. You control the newscasts. You can control the flow of information. Then you can control masses of people. Space, back with more in a moment on AM 640 Toronto Radio. I'm the Spaceman. This is AM 640 Toronto Radio. This is a view from space, and I wanted to give you an idea of how to control the masses. As I stated earlier, you're controlling the news, you're controlling the flow of information, then you're controlling the masses. Because its perception is absolutely everything. Now, the way it's been done for centuries is to control the education system. Take, for instance, the very first fraternity, which of course is the secret society that allows men to be placed in very high positions and not to actually swear to uphold their vows to the people who supposedly elect them to these offices, but to the higher group of people that actually control the fraternities, the secret societies. So take, for instance, the College of William and Mary, a small coeducational public university in Williamsburg, Virginia, in the States. It's the second oldest institution of higher education in the United States, and one of the original 8 public Ivies, the Ivy Leagues. The very first fraternity in America, brought over from Britain, was founded there. William and Mary College was founded in 1693 by a royal charter issued by King William III and Queen Mary II of England. William and Mary educated U.S. presidents Thomas Jefferson, James Monroe, John Tyler, and a lot of other key figures, incredibly important, crucial to the development of the nation, including U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice John Marshall and 16 signers of the United States Declaration of Independence. That's power. It's known, William and Mary, for its liberal arts program. William and Mary also offers a law school, the first in the United States, as well as several other graduate programs. It's very notable in higher education for the founding of the very first academic honor society, or secret society, Phi Beta Kappa. Although it's considered one of the first universities in America, the school still has the traditional college in its name and was specified in its royal charter of 1693. The institution's official name is the College of William and Mary in Virginia. The chancellor, by the way, is Sandra Day O'Connor, who was the very first female associate justice of the Supreme Court in the United States from 1981 to 2006. In February of 2006, it was announced that Sandra Day O'Connor would be the chairwoman of the 400th Jamestown celebration at Jamestown, commemorating the founding of the settlement in 1607. And as chancellor at that nearby College of William and Mary, she also led the ceremonies when Queen Elizabeth, just this past May, came to visit the college, right after the Virginia Tech slaughter of 33, if you'll recall. That was an incredible show that I presented here on AM 640 Toronto Radio with that incredible massacre subsequent to the Queen's visit. Sandra Day O'Connor's job as Supreme Court judge was to be the crucial swing vote on the bench that creates the law of the land. That's the crucial swing vote on the bench that creates the laws. This is how the control of the people is established. She was nominated to the court by President Ronald Reagan and served for over 24 years. O'Connor is the only living retired justice of the Supreme Court. She became the 23rd chancellor of the college, replacing Henry Kissinger, Council of Foreign Relations. Know anyone else who held that position? The Iron Lady did, Margaret Thatcher, the only woman ever to be Prime Minister of England. Chief Justice Warren Burger, George Washington, America's first president, unelected first president, who designed the Masonic layout of the capital city, Washington, and who the city's named after. Sandra Day O'Connor was also a member of the Iraq Study Group, a 10-person committee, 10 number of law, a 10-person committee to assess the war in Iraq, and was a member of the United States Institute of Peace. Its job to study the prevention, management, and peaceful resolution of international conflicts. You know what studies do, don't you? Well, studies manipulate the perception of truth and are designed to herd the population thinking a certain way. It's called social engineering. It's done all the time. A new study shows that, and then everybody debates it and goes, well, I don't believe it, or, yeah, that seems to be true. It's all about perception. But the studies and the little polls that they throw out to you are designed to herd you into a school of thought, to manipulate your mind so that you don't think for yourself. Let me just simply say ion propulsion engines. What's your take on that? The Illuminati simply stacked these committees with their secret society members and brainwashed the country. Here's how the right people from the right schools are placed in the powerful positions. They're always picked by bloodline. For instance, William and Mary is well known for its higher education and for the founding of the Phi Beta Kappa Academic Honor Society, the very first honor society in the history of America. The Phi Beta Kappa Society is an academic honor society founded at the College of William and Mary on December 5th, 1776, not long after George Washington made it a country. It was the first collegiate organization to adopt a Greek letter name and is the oldest honor society in the U.S. Phi Beta Kappa is Greek for love of wisdom, the guide of life, meaning knowledge is the way to become God. It endorses a Gnostic religion, meaning, as I've just stated, climbing the levels higher and higher until you become a god. It's the second oldest college, William and Mary, after only Harvard. But it was at William and Mary during the Revolutionary War that the first Greek letter college fraternity was established, Phi Beta Kappa. The origin of all fraternities came from Phi Beta Kappa, which came from the original secret society called the Flat Hat Club, as it was known outside the membership. The FHC Society, the Flat Hat Club, was the first of the college secret societies or fraternities founded in the States. Thomas Jefferson was a member. How did the Flat Hat Club get its name? From the mortarboard hats. Those caps commonly worn now by students at all colleges at graduation, by all graduating students. It's likely that the symbolism of the flat hat, the flat head, is to confirm that the person wearing it went through the brainwashing of the institution and has now been indoctrinated into the false belief system. In other words, has become successfully brainwashed and has no longer their own opinion, other than the institution's opinion. And their brain is therefore quashed, squished to the point where their head is now flat. Welcome to the Flat Hat Club. Space AM 640, Toronto Radio. Another Latin letter society, the PDA Society, publicly known as Please Don't Ask, was founded at William and Mary early 1773. Three years before the so-called founding of America in 1776. It was formed in opposition to the Flat Hat Club. Remember, the Illuminati always control both sides. A student named Johnny Heath, who belonged to the Phi Beta Kappa secret society, and a student at William and Mary who, according to tradition, asked to join but refused admission. So in retaliation established the first Greek letter fraternity, the Phi Beta Kappa Society, on December 5th, 1776. Phi Beta Kappa was a secret society to protect its members. It had all the attributes of the most modern fraternities. It had an oath of secrecy, a badge, a key, mottos, an initiation, a handshake. Back with more in a minute. On controlling the masses. On A View from Space on AM 640, Toronto Radio. Got started tonight at 10:30. Just to let you know, now that hockey is back, this is the only radio show on Earth where no one knows the time it starts. You can email me at a couple of addresses. Space at 640toronto.com is one. Spaceman at 640 Toronto is another one. I have one here from, let me just call him R. Hi, Space, great show. I always wanted to know your opinion about the Bermuda Triangle or the Devil's Triangle. Have you ever seen the movie? It was made in the 70s. Hope to hear from you. Thanks. I can answer that right now, R. It's very simple. There are different currents that crisscross out in that area of the water in the ocean there. Any triangle or any pyramid shape with three sides has immense power. And so that's why they've called it the Bermuda Triangle or the Devil's Triangle. But it's easily explained away with adverse currents deep under the water. And they have taken people's perception of danger and unknown things that happen in that area, like planes that go down and disappear. Well, they just float away to another part of the ocean. They're just carried away on currents. But when you put the triangle and Bermuda together, it has a mystique. It's exactly what I've been talking about. Perception. People's perception. Fact isn't really entering into it anymore. It's people's perception. Again, climate change, people's perception. It's how they perceive it. Global war on terror, it's how people perceive it. To control masses, you have to have the right people in the places to exert your views and to teach those views to the up-and-coming classes, the masses. And that's how it's done today. And it's done so well, they have it down to a fine art. Fraternities in history is an absolute incredible eye-opener of where I am right now talking about Phi Beta Kappa. One of the most powerful frats in history. And the people, you will not believe, the people who have belonged or who belong to Phi Beta Kappa. Very strategically positioned in their careers. And of course you can see the secret society of Phi Beta Kappa working through them because they're well positioned in the crucialest, most crucial times in American history. And of course, America has been the empire. I say been because, as you can see, America is about to fall. Exactly what I've been talking about on A View from Space on AM 640 Toronto Radio for about 5 years. So, the Phi Beta Kappa secret society has all the attributes of all other fraternities. They have the oath of secrecy, the badge or the key, mottos in Greek. There's an initiation, a handshake. This was Freemasonry from England getting a hold of the education system very early on in American history, as happens with every country that's been taken over in its infancy by Freemasonry. You saw it if you're a baseball fan. In the last few days, they've had the initiation rites given to the rookie baseball players, and they all have to dress up in certain costumes. The Wizard of Oz, of course, was showcased front and center with the New York Yankees just a few days ago. In the chaos of wartime Virginia, they suspended their existence. Phi Beta Kappa did. At William and Mary during the Yorktown campaign, as they also later did during the anti-Masonic controversies of the 1830s. People were catching on to Masonry and finding that there were a lot of people in high places that weren't doing the will of the people, but were doing the will of whoever heads Freemasonry. After that, the Phi Beta Kappa Society was changed from a social frat to the country's first collegiate honorary fraternity, exactly what it is today. So you can see the controlling grip British royalty has on America through Freemasonry and other places in the world, including Canada. By 1920, there were 89 chapters at a variety of schools. Today there's 270. Some famous and incredibly influential members of Phi Beta Kappa were Bushrod Washington. Do you even know who Bushrod Washington was? He was maybe the most famous for his long career on the United States Supreme Court. Bushrod Washington was a nephew of George Washington, graduated from the college and Mary College, where he was one of the first members of Phi Beta Kappa. Freemason George Washington himself sponsored Bushrod's legal studies with fellow founder James Wilson. He inherited Mount Vernon from George Washington when George died. Mount Vernon, Virginia, was the plantation home of the first president of the United States, George Washington, of course. In 1674, John Washington, the great-grandfather of George, and Nicholas Spencer came into possession of the land from which Mount Vernon plantation would be carved. When John Washington died in 1677, his son Lawrence, George Washington's grandfather, inherited his father's stake in that property. In 1690, he agreed to formally divide the estimated 5,000 acres or so with the heirs of Nicholas Spencer. The Spencers took the southern half bordering Dogue Creek, originally called Epsonwasson. In September of 1674, a land grant from Lord Culpeper, after the former name of the creek, leaving the Washingtons the portion along Little Hunting Creek. The Spencer family is one of Britain's aristocratic dynasties. This Spencer earls enjoyed wealth and political power. Albert Edward John Spencer, the 7th Earl Spencer, was Princess Diana's paternal grandparent. Just to give you an idea of the linkage from America to Britain. Space, back with more on Controlling the Masses on AM 640 Toronto Radio and A View from Space. If you got a comment on tonight's show, or if you got some information, I've got a couple of addresses. Space at 640toronto.com is one, and Spaceman at 640toronto.com is the other. Just going through how the masses are controlled and how things seem to not go the way of the people as it's supposed to do in democracy, but goes the way of, well, should we say a higher power? Let's call it the shadow government behind our governments. Because there is a power behind our politicians that are driving their agendas. We're certainly not. And so to put those people in those places to do the bidding of this, we'll call the shadowy government, the Illuminati, the elite rich, to put these people into these high places to be able to manipulate our lives is what Phi Beta Kappa, for instance, is all about. The secret society, the fraternity that was first in all of fraternities to get a hold in America. And it happened to be at William and Mary College. Phi Beta Kappa is the controller of the masses in this instance. For instance, I was just talking about Bushrod Washington, who inherited Lawrence George Washington's grandfather's stake in the property of a cotton plantation. The Spencer Earls split the territory with the Washingtons. And as I've just talked about, Spencer Earls enjoyed immense wealth and political power. Albert Edward John Spencer, the 7th Earl Spencer, was Princess Diana's paternal grandparent. James Kent was Phi Beta Kappa, the first professor of law in Columbia College, where Mahmoud Ahmadinejad made his infamous question and answer period engagement as he came earlier this week to America and to speak at the United Nations. But first to Columbia College. James Kent, first professor of law at Columbia College, Phi Beta Kappa. In 1798, he became the judge of the Supreme Court in the state of New York. John Quincy Adams, Phi Beta Kappa, 6th President of the United States, also was the son of the United States President John Adams, 2nd President of the United States. Eli Whitney. You've been through our educational system. You know who Eli Whitney was, the inventor of the cotton gin, which revolutionized the way Southern cotton was harvested. Phi Beta Kappa member. The cotton gin was a machine that removed the seeds from cotton, a process which had until that time been extremely labor-intensive. And when it came along, it created demand for even more black slaves to pick cotton. Also, its interchangeable manufacturing parts that would revolutionize northern industry and in time be a major factor in the North Victory War in the Civil War played a huge part. Daniel Webster, Phi Beta Kappa. He negotiated the Webster-Ashburton Treaty that established the definitive eastern border between the United States and Canada, the 49th parallel. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, Phi Beta Kappa, controlling the print. Are the Illuminati here with Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, the American poet, a professor at Harvard. He was the first American poet to have a commemorative sculpted bust of him in Poets' Corner at Westminster Abbey in London. Highly revered in Freemasonry. You know from that he was instrumental in writing and teaching the Masonic doctrine. Chester Alan Arthur is another Phi Beta Kappa member. He was the 21st President of the United States. Arthur was a member of the Republican Party and worked as a lawyer before becoming the 20th Vice President under James Garfield. While Garfield was assassinated by Charles Guiteau on July 2nd, 1881, he didn't die until September 19th. That's when Arthur was sworn in as president. You'll notice throughout American history, these Masonic presidents are poised to replace the assassinated presidents. Arthur, by the way, Chester Alan Arthur, was supposedly born in the town of Fairfield in Franklin County, Vermont, even though no birth record has ever been found in the U.S. His parents were William Arthur and Malvina Stone, Irish immigrants who initially immigrated to Dunham in Quebec, here in Canada, where they bought a farm located about 80 miles north of Vermont. During his lifetime, political rivals circulated the rumor that he was born across the international boundary, being here in Canada, and that rumor that he was born across that international boundary, if true, would have barred him from serving as the President of the United States, because no one born outside of that country at this point, now, today,
can be president. He was obviously Irish royal bloodline, and this was the reason his birth records were never found. Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., Supreme Court judge. His opinion on the value of taxes is often quoted by the Internal Revenue Service in the states, who appropriately enough have these words on a plaque above the entrance to their headquarters at 1111 Constitution Avenue. The sign says, "Taxes are what we pay for a civilized society." How about that for brainwashing? John D. Rockefeller Jr., Phi Beta Kappa, pivotal member of the billionaire Rockefeller family. He was the sole son and heir to the billionaire Standard Oil industrialist John D. Rockefeller Sr. Nelson Aldrich Rockefeller, 41st President of the United States under President Gerald Ford, Vice President under President Gerald Ford. I call him Mr. Cleanup, Gerald Ford. Why? Well, he pardoned Nixon. Freemason President Lyndon Baines Johnson appointed Ford to the Warren Commission, a special task force set up to investigate the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. And in the 1997 Assassination Records Review Board released a document that revealed that Ford had altered the first draft of the report to read, "A bullet had entered the base of the back of his neck slightly to the right of the spine." Ford had elevated the location of the wound from its original first draft of the Warren Commission report, stated that a bullet had entered Kennedy's back at a point slightly above the shoulder and to the right of the spine. President Ford's personal opinions about Freemasonry were revealed, too, in a speech he gave at the unveiling ceremony at the George Washington Masonic National Memorial, Alexandria, Virginia, on February 17th of 75. He said, "When I took my obligation as a Master Mason, incidentally, with my 3 younger brothers, I recalled the value of my own father attached to that, the value that my own father attached to that order. But I had no idea that I would ever be added to the company of the father of our country and 12 other members of the order who also served as presidents of the United States." Mr. Cleanup. He cleans up all the messes or loose ends that the Masons, in their extravagances, made. You know, about 1/3 of U.S. presidents have been Masons. Another Phi Beta Kappa member was Robert Strange McNamara, former United States Secretary of Defense from 61 to 68. How about this for a pivotal man in a pivotal position? That was during the Vietnam War. The United States Secretary of Defense during the Vietnam War, Phi Beta Kappa. And as you know, or may not be, Vietnam also had its 9/11, as the Second World War had its Pearl Harbor. The United States of America entered the Vietnamese War under false pretenses. This is Spaceman on AM 640, Toronto Radio. Back with more. I'm Space, AM 640, Toronto Radio, and a view from space. Got started at 10:30 tonight. You can email me at spaceman@640toronto.com or space@640toronto.com. Controlling the masses, Phi Beta Kappa, the very first secret society, the fraternity, the very first in history in American colleges. Started first at William and Mary College. I'm just going through some of the members, and they're very, very, very crucial positions at various strategic times in the history of the United States of America, like John D. Rockefeller. Another one's Nelson Ulrich Rockefeller. Robert McNamara, Vietnamese War. He was the United States Secretary of Defense. David Dean Rusk, United States Secretary of State from 61 to 69 under Presidents JFK and Lyndon Baines Johnson. He was the second longest serving Secretary of State in history. Phi Beta Kappa. That's what kept him there. John Foster Dulles. They named Dulles Airport after this guy. Secretary of State under President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Huge figure in the early Cold War era. He was the guy who advocated an aggressive stance against communism around the world. Both his grandfather, John W. Foster Dulles, and his uncle, Robert Lansing Dulles, served as Secretaries of State. He was also the oldest brother of Alan Welsh Dulles, Director of Central Intelligence under Eisenhower. His son, Avery Robert Dulles, converted to Catholicism and became the very first American priest to be directly appointed to cardinal. John Stennis, Phi Beta Kappa. He wanted everybody to take a literacy test before they were allowed to vote. He was trying to impede black voters. Stennis's record on civil rights is god-awful through his long career. He was a prosecutor who tried to convict and execute 3 black men whose murder confessions had been extracted by torture. Johnny Stennis was fully aware of the methods of interrogation, including beatings, used to gain confessions. They named an aircraft carrier after this guy. It's called the USS John C. Stennis. You remember Cappy Weinberger, Caspar Willard Weinberger, 15th Secretary of Defense. He's a member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, a British Order of Chivalry, Knight Grand Cross, Phi Beta Kappa. George Herbert Walker Bush, the 41st President of the United States, George W.'s dad, Phi Beta Kappa. And like his father, Prescott Bush, he was tapped for membership by the Skull and Bones Secret Society. Some people believe that through this organization, also known as the Order of Death, Bush made connections with other influential people and families which shaped his career. He was the head of the CIA. He was the CEO of Eli Lilly, the pharmaceutical company that came up with the drug LSD, and it was heavily used by the CIA in the 50s and then distributed to America's youth at rock concerts by the CIA as part of Tavistock's British invasion and indoctrination of the youth in the Western world into the Aquarian Age, getting ready for the Antichrist, the Luciferian culture. George Herbert Walker Bush was also responsible for leading the United Nations coalition into the 1990-1991 Gulf War. Ford appointed him to be chief of the U.S. liaison office in the People's Republic of China. He opened the door to China. Phi Beta Kappa. You know where George Herbert Walker Bush and George W. got their names from, don't you? George Herbert Walker. Well, Prescott Bush married the daughter of a man called George Herbert Walker. Prescott Bush is the one who was helping the Nazis build their war machine at the start of the Second World War. George Herbert Walker's daughter married Prescott Bush. And George Herbert Walker's family, not Bush's, George Herbert Walker, the daughter who married into the Bush family, used to own the New York Mets. John Ellis, Jeb, they call him, Bush, son of George Herbert Walker Bush, former governor of Florida, Phi Beta Kappa. Henry Alfred Kissinger, 56th United States Secretary of State. Born in Fürth in Franconia, Bavaria. Former Chancellor William and Mary, Phi Beta Kappa. He was also study director in nuclear weapons and foreign policy at the Council on Foreign Relations. He worked with the Rockefeller Brothers Fund as director to the Special Studies Project. He was also National Security Advisor under Nixon. Awarded the 1973 Nobel Peace Prize for establishing a ceasefire and a U.S. withdrawal from Vietnam. Though the ceasefire was quickly violated by the North, who attacked South Vietnam. But that's okay. Condoleezza Rice, Secretary of State for George W. right now, Phi Beta Kappa. First African-American woman. Second African-American after Colin Powell. And second woman after Madeleine Albright to serve as Secretary of State. Very high-placed people. Condi Rice, very involved in the Mideast peace negotiations of sending the Illuminati messages back and forth. John Glover Roberts Jr., he's the 17th and current Chief Justice of the United States, Phi Beta Kappa. Hillary Diane Rodham Clinton, Phi Beta Kappa. Senator Arlen Specter has been chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, chairman of Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, chairman of Senate Veteran Affair, the chairman of Senate Judicial Committee. Phi Beta Kappa. Teddy Roosevelt was too. And Samuel Russell was. Established the Russell and Company for the purpose of acquiring opium in Turkey and smuggling it to China. Russell and Company merged with the Perkins Syndicate, Boston family, in 1830 and became the very first American opium smuggler. Many of the great American and European fortunes, by the way, of the elite rich were built on the Chinese opium trade and the Golden Triangle, as they call it. There's that shape again. One of Russell and Company's chief of operations in Canton was Warren Delano Jr., grandfather of Franklin Roosevelt. Other Russell partners included John Cleve Green, who financed Princeton University, Abiel Lowe, who financed construction of Columbia University, Joseph Coolidge and the Perkins family, the Sturgis family, and the Ford's families. Coolidge's son organized the United Fruit Company, and his grandson, Archibald Coolidge, was co-founder of the Council of Foreign Relations, all Phi Beta Kappa. William Huntington Russell, Sam's cousin, studied in Germany from 1831 to 1832. Germany was a hotbed of new ideas, by the way. The scientific method was being applied to all forms of human endeavor. They were the Rosicrucianists. This was the beginning of removing God from life in the New World. You see, British royalty, James I, had rewritten the Bible and changed it from the one the Puritans of England were using. The Puritans were put on a boat, sent to America, massacred by the Indians. That's Jamestown. Jamestown was named after James I, the witch, as the Dutch called him, who rewrote the Bible. The Spaceman, AM 640 Toronto Radio. Back with more in a minute. On A View from Space. I'm Space. It's AM 640 Toronto Radio on A View from Space. Start time tonight was 10:30. Have to watch next week. It will vary. After all, this is the show where no one really knows what time it starts. You can email me, spaceman640toronto.com, space at 640toronto.com. A couple of email addresses for you. Tonight, the controlling of the masses, how it's done. Putting people in strategic locations, in strategic positions in corporations, government, law, is how it gets done. So now you know why your politicians aren't doing the will of the people. See, the goal of the elite rich, the Illuminati, is total control of humanity in the New World Order. But not the way the Nazis tried it, which was one of their other attempts, which was hold a gun to someone's head. Because they realized you hold a gun to someone's head, they just go underground. Now technology has given them the opportunity to move forward in a large way. The surveillance society. Facebook is a perfect example. They know all of your likes, all of your dislikes, most of your views on what you have to say about things. So they already know where you stand. With places like Facebook and the information that they can get now from technology, they don't have to do surveys to find out how far along their little scheme is going, if you're buying it or not, how hard they have to work on convincing you or what area. They no longer have to do that because they can see how it's going. The Illuminati are very mindful that they're in their final moments that they have left to realize their goal. The New World Order has been established for a long time, hiding behind the world's governments and corporations, but they are still in the midst of creating the subliminal hex on humanity that makes us all believe it once and for all, never to question anything again. These people are totally convinced of success, you know. The Illuminati are the elite royal bloodlines that control world affairs through institutions like the United Nations, NATO, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the Red Cross, U.S. Federal Reserve, the guys that have been playing havoc with the American economy. You name it, they own it, in one way or another. Their agenda is laced with deceit and corruption. The whole world has been deceived by their reality manipulation. The biggest weapons they have against you and I is to create fear and greed and guilt within our consciousness. A beam of light passing through a prism creates a rainbow of color, right? It's refracted light. Light broken up. When this rainbow is placed on a two-dimensional plane and in the shape of a rainbow color, which is one of the symbols of the New World Order, three primary colors appear. Red, yellow, and blue. These colors must appear at 120-degree intervals on the color wheel, or the rainbow effect of the light's composition disappears. Exactly 120 degrees. That's 10 times 12. These are two tables that make up the two major number systems used to create science, used to create magic, which is their religion. The Illuminati needs to keep this relationship of 120 degrees intact. Otherwise, the number system needed to manipulate humanity would disappear, just like the divided light broken up by the prism. In other words, we would be immune to their occult trickery. We would see through it. They need the prism to break up the real God's truth, which is pure light. The 120-degree intervals on the color wheel are the basis for geometric, mathematical, arithmetic, astrological, numerological, and chemical formulae that are the foundation of the three-dimensional experience and the power that drives our modern world. 120 degrees. Those 120-degree intervals refract the light and break it up. Notice the royalty number. 1, 2, 3 adds up to 3. The number assigned to royalty. The perfect shape, the triangle, 3. They are the foundation of the three-dimensional experience. For instance, how many houses are there in the zodiac? Well, there are 12. The three 120-degree intervals, 3 times 12, is 360 degrees. Each degree is supposed to represent a day. After 360 days, the Earth is supposed to have traveled around the Sun. This 360-degree circuit around the Sun is the source of the 360-degree circle. There are 360 degrees in a circle. The sun worshipper symbol, the circle. And all of the sciences are based on this. But in fact, the Earth takes 365 and a quarter days, and a couple of minutes and a few seconds to go around the sun. This odd number, which actually has an infinite decimal, could never allow any precise formulas to be concocted. So, the trip around the sun, or the sun around the Earth, was rounded down to the zodiac circle of 360 degrees or days. When this is applied to mathematical equations, rounded down to natural pi, 3 or 3.14, the golden ratio or golden mean is rounded down to 1.61. This is deliberately done so that the natural course of creation caused by Lucifer, the angel of light, would of course conflict with the true God. God is light, pure light. God is love. The Illuminati's god, Lucifer, is the divider of light. I've just accurately described what happens when light is divided into parts. This is how the Luciferian-controlled Illuminati manifest their deeds in the world today. There is no matter whatsoever in paradise. No matter. There is no evil. There's no divided light. There is something else there to take the place of shape, color, and sound, which is what happens when light is divided. That's how we get colors. Remember, 120-degree intervals on the color wheel. The rainbow effect. Light's composition. Refracted light breaks up into 3 distinct colors. First red, first yellow, then blue, and others follow. The light beam divided apart forms the atom symbol when it's observed in 2 dimensions. But you have to ask yourself this question: how could the ancient mystics possibly have knowledge of the atom 6,000 years ago? There were no microscopes that we know of. Well, the answer is pretty simple. The demons, or fallen angels, were eyewitnesses and saw it up close firsthand, not through a microscope. They were in the presence of God, light energy, when it first entered the 3rd dimensional experience. The Luciferian mind saw everything, saw the light break apart into colors, substance and sound. That's Earth. Space. Back with more on AM 640 Toronto Radio in just a moment. Spaceman, AM 640 Toronto Radio. You can email me, space@640toronto.com, spaceman@640toronto.com. Here's one from, let me call this person just Y. Space, thoughts about Facebook. Facebook's value is unlimited. More so to a national security entity like CIA, MI6, Mossad. All in one, you have from almost every person on there their IP address, their name, their address where they live, their workplace, their school, their email address, their sexual preference, political views, friends, like collaborators, if it comes to it, interest groups, places traveled, countries visited, credit card info. If you just send a gift, pictures, phone number ads clicked on. Notice how they make you use your real name, too. People have been kicked off for not doing that. And they encourage you to verify your account via cell phone. It's fairly easy to track a cell phone position if you're needing to do that. If I were the CIA and doing warrantless searches, this is the first place I would check out. Easy. Too easy. Secret police could only have dreamed of having access to this kind of database. Now it's a reality. Why? Exactly what I was talking about. And everyone, because it's all about perception, remember, everyone wants a piece of the action on Facebook, because it's where everyone meets now. You know who last week was thinking about buying a piece of Facebook? Microsoft. They went on in the action. Microsoft, of course, Bill Gates, his job is to get everyone hooked up to the internet. Every single person in the world. They even have a brand new initiative they call, let me see if I can recall it, it's called Buy One, Give One, or Get One, Give One. You buy a computer in the United States, plastic, works in solar power, has a couple of aerials that you can hook up with the battery also and not use the solar power all the time if you're in a hot zone. It's $399. If you buy one of those, someone in the third world country, some child, gets one free. They're getting you to pay to hook everyone else up to this surveillance system. What people in the third world need is food, not free computers. But they want everyone hooked up. See, getting back to the light beam and refraction of light, slowing it down is what you do when you break apart light. You slow it down and it breaks into colors. This is exactly what happens on this third dimensional level that we're experiencing, you and I today living here on this earth. Being in paradise with God is pure energy, pure light energy. The Illuminati believed that it was Lucifer that broke apart the light of paradise, and in so doing created color, shape, and sound. In other words, this is how the Illuminati believe that Lucifer is the creator of heaven and earth. He's the light bringer. More accurately, he is merely the divider of light. This mystical information is known as Kabbalism, which has been passed on to the Illuminati power brokers, but with a slight twist. The rulers of ancient Sumer, Babylon, were the first to receive the knowledge of Kabbalism. Demonic entities, I'm talking demons, then interbred with human women, producing leaders of great renown and of demonic influence. These are, I believe, the mythological people that we're brainwashed, taught about today. Zeus is Satan, and his pantheon of gods that come with him are the demons. These are the mythological people that we're taught about. These leaders laid claim to the divine right of kings to rule. In other words, Lucifer gave them the right to be royal or chosen. Remember that it was only the rulers of the world's empires, the powerful leaders, that claim to the divine right to rule. They, in turn, adopted a group of humanity, common Babylonian people, to manipulate through the sharing of this Kabbalistic knowledge. This is the way the shamans or priests were anointed and the occult religion was established. In the centuries past, Kabbalism seduced a lot of groups. Eventually it was passed into the hands of the Masonic Christians and the Roman Catholic Church and the Society of the Jesuits, the Knights Templar. The Masonic Christian Crusaders also laid claim to this Kabbalistic knowledge. And it grew through the secret society of Freemasonry, right up to today. The bloodlines carefully mapped out, carefully traced. The royal families of Europe, who are really all one family, only marry within their own bloodline and will shun any family member who marries a commoner. This is the same. The same is true with the Saudi population. This is the demonic-inspired bloodline with their so-called divine right to rule. They are the chosen people of God in their own eyes, as stated in the New Testament, which is the new or the next stage of the agenda, by the way. Spaceman AM 640, Toronto Radio, and a view from space. Being called one of the most influential men in all of history. He's highly revered in Freemasonry, as well as in the dark occult religion, and has been through the ages. Numbers are looked on as sacred. Sacred geometry is the number system made into religion. This is why Freemasonry's symbol is the compass and square. They're not really interested in building physical buildings, but in fulfilling the agenda of their god Lucifer, being seen as the architect of the universe, and to this end apply the principles of their sacred geometry to build endless monuments and systems to manipulate the world. Space back with more in a minute. It's AM 640, Toronto Radio. Spaceman, AM 640, Toronto Radio, and a view from space. Start time tonight, 10:30. Watch next week. Be after hockey sometime. This is, after all, the only show that no one knows the start time of. just been talking about the creation of the number system. The crucial first step to global manipulation is the creation of the number system. That's why Pythagoras is revered so highly in the world of Freemasonry. Now, just think for a second, without the number system that we have set up today, there could be no global deception. There could be no global manipulation. Think about it. How could there even be a stock exchange without numbers? If you don't have a number system, how could there be banks to put everyone in debt? You see, without numbers, there's no money. It's the barter system. I have livestock. You have grain. We trade. I cannot wait to see you. And when you come, or when I go to yours, it's a celebration. Because we're giving of what we've got and accepting back in trade what you produce. Instead, what happened? Instead of us exchanging foodstuffs and things that we need together, they put money as the thing that we all have to chase. We wouldn't be chasing the almighty dollar just to pay all of these bills that you and I get all the time if there were no numbers. Without this number system, imagine a world with no bills. Now that's paradise. Every corruption in the world is the result of an occult religion of some scientific system using numbers. So you can easily see the reason those desiring to control and manipulate the masses of the world must create this type of number system before they could even succeed. That's why William of Orange, the one who began the Bank of England, put money out onto the street. See, Lucifer, together with a multitude of his conscious entities, call them fallen angels, demons, whatever you like, chose not to submit to wisdom. The truth. What resulted was a fall from wisdom, a fall from paradise. The fall happened spontaneously because the rejection of wisdom is the automatic acceptance of density. Density is heaviness. The fall into this third dimensional experience. It was purposely and deliberately determined by Lucifer, and is the very basis and foundation of this physical world that we live in. This third dimensional reality is the creation of a hypnotic experience where you and I choose individually to embrace or reject wisdom. If we choose to become aware, we enter into the original paradise state. If we believe the system of the world and the endless seductions used to deceive us, we get confused and troubled. The Luciferian idea is to choose to reject this wisdom. And the only rewards are what you get on this level. That's why the world tries to convince you to love money, possessions, power over things and others, and not the true God. That's why they're trying to prolong human life. Because that's all they have. They've chosen to reject wisdom. They've chosen to reject God. The confusion and corruption that you and I have been born into is very heavy to bear. Humanity's natural state is of sexual desire. We're attracted to each other. This is the positive male and the negative female electrical current within us all. But even this positive and negative sexual energy is its simplest form of duality. In the paradise state, all male and female are one. Quite the opposite. From there being no sex, sexual energy is constantly experienced. It's experienced without shape, color, or sound. Even in physical terms, sexual ecstasy is in the imagination. Now you have to admit that. The less physical interference, the greater is the ecstasy. The perverted manipulation of this awareness through mystic occult religions has dumbed down our awareness. Manipulated religion has saturated us with guilt and with fear. Fallen angels, demons, are constantly at work trying to keep us locked into the fallen state. These demons have no energy of their own and are in desperate need of humanity to generate energy for them, and their energy source is fear-based. That's where the vampires come in. This is the densest part of the physical plane. You need to understand that density basically refers to both physical heaviness and the lack of wisdom. To be dense. The Illuminati families, including the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, the ancient pharaohs, the Habsburgs, the House of Lorraine, the de Medicis, the Lee family, the Astors, the Onassis, the Kennedys, the Russells, the Therns and Paxes, the DuPonts, the Van Duens. Extremely powerful families affiliated with the top families, like the Bundys, the Disneys, the Collins, the Freemans, the Reynolds, the Crooks, the McDonalds. And more family names with direct roots connected with Cain's bloodline include the Harrimans, the Tafts, the Lords, the Kellogg's, Goodyears, the Whitneys, the Vanderbilts, the Sloans, the Perkins, the Bushes. The Russell family is one of the major bloodline families, too, and Charles Taze Russell is the founder of the Watchtower Society, the Jehovah's Witnesses. The Russell Trust founded the Skull and Bones Society at Yale. The Russell family had amassed a lot of their wealth running drugs during the Opium Wars in the 19th century. They flew the Skull and Bones flag on their ships that hauled the opium. Haven't you seen it? It's on hats now, on purses. It's on backpacks, scarves, belts, T-shirts. You, listening to me now, might even be flying the Skull and Bones now. You might be wearing it. Your wife or your daughter or your friend might have a purse with it. Very popular right now. A walk on any street right now in Toronto, you don't have to wait long before you see someone coming along with it. It's on belts. They're making it fashionable. And the Skull and Bones flag did in millions. The Opium Wars. And now people are wearing it like it's as dirty as the swastika. More coming up. The Merovingian bloodline I'm talking about. Controlling the masses on AM 640, Toronto Radio. On A View from Space. I'm the guy they call Space. This is AM 640, Toronto Radio, and A View from Space. I was just talking about the Skull and Bones, which was the flag on the Russell family's opium sailing ships. They ran opium out of China, sold it to the rest of the world. As a matter of fact, a lot of the European elite rich families made their money this way. And now the Skull and Bones is all over everyone's person that's walking on the street now. It's a fashionable design, which just shows you how easily manipulated the masses are. If you knew what the Skull and Bones actually stood for, there's no way you'd go near it. And yet, so many people are sporting it. Now, George W. Bush Jr., George Bush Sr., Prescott Bush, the grandfather and supporter of the Nazis in Germany during the Second World War, are members of Skull and Bones death cult. United States of America, the major empire at the moment, the one about to crash, is being used now to perform blood and human sacrifice by the artificially fabricated wars called the Global War on Terror. Their god, Lucifer, demands this blood and horror. The Bush family is just one of the elite Merovingian bloodline families that tie directly to the royal elite families of Europe. Just think, 34 of the 43 American presidents can trace their lineage back to Charlemagne. King Charlemagne. Part of the Merovingian bloodline. So can Jean Chrétien, by the way, and Celine Dion. How do you think she amassed her millions? How do you think she got the jobs that paid so well? Now you know. The Bush family can be even traced to Alexander the Great. And some even suggest the Bushes can be traced to the pharaohs of ancient Egypt. In other words, all the presidents and the United States are cousins. Amazing, isn't it? How this system they call democracy can keep producing presidents who are blood related. And I've said this many times on AM 640, Toronto Radio, and A View from Space, that you're not elected president of the United States of America. You're born to be. The emblem of America, as well as all the other empires of the world headed by this bloodline, plus countries including Iraq, Germany, Russia, France during the Napoleon era, Brazil, Mexico, the Roman Empire, Egypt, and their Air Force, uses the eagle. The eagle represents the old phoenix of Egypt, delivering its victim in the clouds to the sacrificial pyramid for slaughter. The eagle was the emblem on the standard that was flown by the family of Cain. Originally, it was to be the serpent. But Cain thought, what better way to disguise the serpent bloodline than to have a serpent killer as its emblem? The eagle. And what did they say when they said they landed on the moon? The eagle has landed. Fake though it was. The agenda for the world is actually told to us in science fiction, you know. Of course, that's the best possible way to hide the plot, isn't it? Create loads of propaganda that mirrors the goal and then establish in people's minds that this is the truth. Their plans are carefully disguised as science fiction and is shown to us as entertainment/brainwashing. Of course, we pay for that entertainment/brainwashing, and the price is always going up, isn't it? They also play with time. Pope Gregory was responsible for the calendar that is 12 years off the mark. You got it 12 years off the mark. You have to ask yourself why. After the Gregorian calendar, the calendar we use, was instituted, it just happened to skip ahead 12 years. The reason for this skip of 12 years was to throw the world off the trail of what was coming. As I've said before, the Jewish nation is being used, as are the Muslims and Christians. All are being manipulated through horrific events to be used by this bloodline family for their diabolical cause. Their calendar began on September 11th, 2001. That was day one. This is why they're billing that day as the day that changed the world forever. Because it's their first day of their creation. And in 1999, according to the Gregorian calendar, the Hebrew calendar celebrated its 6,000th anniversary. If you subtract 12 years from 1999, you get the year 1987. The Illuminati are following the Gregorian calendar outwardly, but symbolically, they're following the Hebrew calendar. They're ritualistic, obsessed. Because they wish to have their new world order, their messianic return, and their new age thought processes unfolding or in place before or by the true symbolic year of 2000 AD, which will be in actuality 2011 to 2012. Because you have to add on the 12 years back. Do you understand what I'm saying? We are 12 years behind. When 2000 comes, it will actually be 2011 on our Gregorian calendar to 2012. That's adding the 12 years back on. Incredible events will be unfolding in the next few years, 4 to 5 years, which will seem logical to us as a natural unfolding of events will be totally contrived by the Illuminati's New World Order launch agenda. You know what happens in 2012, don't you? The Mayan calendar comes to an end. Not necessarily the end of the world, no. 2012 Mayan calendar ending simply means that a new era will begin. I'm Space. This is A View from Space on AM 640 Toronto Radio. Just talking about the 12 years that we are behind the Gregorian calendar was instituted. And it just happened to skip ahead 12 years. So in actual fact, when 2000 comes around, the original Y2K date will be 2012. Now, the Illuminati, as I was saying before the break, are determined to make you think that the big final battle is coming. And they've done their brainwashing indeed with all of their movies, with all their literature, and with all world events, and with the Masonic Christian preachers who are saying Armageddon's close. Christ is coming back. They've done their job well. Genesis 1:1 says, "In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth." Now, what I said about the dividing light of, via the prism, shows you that attaching sound energy to light energy slows light down. This thought of combining a sound with a shape and color results in matter becoming visible or being created. The third dimensional world appears because of this thought process. This thought process is the number and language system of Lucifer himself, which is what we're operating in now. Thought process creates matter and time and space. Therefore, it's no giant leap, unlike the fake moon landings, to see that the heavens and the earth and everything in them were created by Lucifer. I mean, in our minds, with our education. I mean, how do you know our solar system really consists of the sun and 8 official planets? At least 3 dwarf planets, and more than 130 satellites of the planets. Have you ever been out there to see? Have you been out there to see, say, Saturn for yourself? This is another example of us taking someone else's word for it that the Illuminati-controlled learning institutions espouse, like Albert Einstein's theory of relativity. A lie. The theory that NASA espouses about space travel would then be nearly impossible. Einstein's laws don't completely rule out the possibility of interstellar travel, but they do make it extremely unlikely. Any would-be starship captain faces 2 obstacles. First, nothing can travel faster than the speed of light, since the closest star to Earth is about 4 light years away. Even a spaceship traveling at half the speed of light would need 8 years for the trip. And this kind of a starship, by the way, would be about 18,000 times faster than a space shuttle in orbit. Second, Einstein's theory of special relativity dictates that time itself would flow much more slowly in a starship moving at near light speeds than it would on Earth. So even if we could build fast starships, would anyone want to travel in them? The problem with interstellar travel is not really that things are so far away, it's coming back and finding out that what for you was 1 year on the starship was 1 million years back here on Earth. The system we live in and the hoops we're forced to jump through as we pay homage, which is to give credibility to, causes us to make intellectual thought process this way of existing, to be our God. The real good news in all is that when we realize that this is how it works, we escape. We don't have to intellectualize anything in our life or plan for the future to worry about the past. Realizing the answers we're given allows us to see the truth. And we already are the light and wisdom of the paradise dimension. We don't need some Luciferian mind to manipulate us to constantly think what it wants us to think. The indoctrination into the hallowed halls of science and education is nothing more than the real worship of the god Lucifer, the creator of this heaven and this earth. This is the real battle of Armageddon. What I've just stated is the connection between two seemingly opposing factions of the Luciferian agenda, scientific and religion. To become indoctrinated in the numbing numbering system and to be herded by the demons into the language system is to revere the god of deceit. To be void of this higher learning is not to be void of wisdom at all. In fact, the less higher learning is basically ignorance. If you've been taught to ignore wisdom, wisdom only knows what to do when the moment comes and has no premeditated precepts except to do what is of freedom, liberty, and love. And only as the moment presents itself. But intellectual thought processes, which is what the Illuminati calls higher learning, enslaves and corrupts. It's all preconceived. The corruption you see happening all around you in the world and in the confusion of your mind is just a result of the battle going on within because of the belief that knowledge is good. Awareness is something that human beings naturally have. Knowledge is fabricated fantasy and has to be learned. One major event that took place and was performed by the Luciferian influence in your mind was the continental drift. This was the channeling of the earth into what's become known as the East, the West, and you know what they call the other one, don't you? The Third World. Interesting, isn't it? The world is divided into three. Their beloved number. This began pretty quickly in the days of Peleg, about 3000 BC, and is still continuing, about an inch a year, they say. What happened was the Luciferian thought process needed to save a grand portion of the world's landmass and wealth for the later stages of the agenda. So they had to go and rip off and divide the one huge landmass that existed from the beginning and a hold of a lot of it in store until it was needed. Remember now, the Kabbalah secret wisdom is that matter can be manipulated one molecule at a time through incantation, through shape, through color combinations. Look what they do with the orange wave around the world. This is thought. This is also the process. How they conjure natural disasters and sell them to us, but are manipulated up on the world. This continental drift was a wonderful exercise in creating all kinds of foolish notions about where the lost continent of Atlantis was and who may have originally populated it. Now, how can I be so certain that it happened this way and in this time of history? One simple sign of who was behind such an escapade is again seen in the symbolism in the names given to the continents and the numbers associated with them. I'll be back with that in a moment on AM 640, Toronto Radio. Spaceman, and this is A View from Space on AM 640, Toronto Radio. So, one simple sign of who was behind such an escapade as what is going on is seen in the symbolism of the names given to the continents and the numbers associated with them. First, there's North America, South America, Asia, Africa, Antarctica, Australia, and Europe. 6 of the 7 continents start and end with a capless pyramid. These 6 also include an eye. The eye is the symbol for Ra, the ancient Egyptian sun god. And then there's Europe, which has no A at either end, but does have an E at each end. And it does have an R and an RO and RU in reverse. The word rope is also in Europe. You see, you have to ask yourself, where did these names come from? From Lucifer's mind, of course. The letters RO were the old word from which we get royalty. Europe is the continent of the major royal elite bloodline, the Merovingian bloodline that has conquered the world. All these royal families are really only one family. The vine, or the rope, is the cord that winds its way completely through all the dynasties of these countries. The vine, or rope, is also a Masonic symbolism. So there are 7 continents. 6 are controlled by the all-seeing eye of the god of the pyramid, and the 7th is the royal continent, which controls all of the other continents through the cities of London, Paris, and Rome. Starting to catch on? Seven continents. 7, a very interesting number. Of course, there is one continent I need to mention here, simply because it does not have an R or an E in it. But Asia does have a serpent S and an I. That's the land of the dragon kings, and the all-seeing eye does control this continent just like all the rest. But let me say that this continent is different in culture and thought processes. Asia is to be kept separate for use in some final battle. This was done absolutely on purpose. The 2 Americas are North and South. 2 poles, male, female. Take a close look at the map of these continents, and you'll see they're a similar shape. They're triangular shaped. The words North and South each have 5 letters. 5 is the number of the fortress that the Illuminati have built. Impregnable in knowledge, impregnable in monetary value, impregnable in military. Pentagram is satanic, five-pointed stars. The apple, for instance, when it's cut in half, reveals a pentagram at its core. That's the symbolism that the Bible shows as the instrument for the fall of man. Eve tells Adam, remember, eat the apple. And Apple today is seducing you with this invasive technology for complete surveillance and control of all the masses. That's why they named it the company Apple. And that's why there's a bite out of the apple. It's man's fall. The symbolism is everything. R is the center letter in America. R is the center letter in North. R stands for Ra, the sun god. U is the center letter in, so U, T-H, South. U is the center letter. South means, in dark occult thinking, to face the sun or the light. U is the vessel receiving the light as a womb or female. U is the union created between two elements caused by a twist or a turn to deceive. All this continental symbolism by Lucifer was an attempt to thought control, to put symbolism into the names. That's not all it is. How did they get the 7 continents? That's the punishment of the true God putting on the generations of Cain. Till the 7th generation. That's where the power comes from for the 7th son. Look it up yourself. There are 7 wonders of the world, 7 mystery religions, 7 days in a week, 7 games in a World Series in baseball. In the Bible, it's a symbol of divine perfection. The days of creation, 7. God rested on the 7th. There are 7 churches, 7 seals, 7 trumpets. How did they get 5 oceans? Dark, occult symbolism going on there. The fortress are the oceans. Meravi lived in the ocean. The oceans took the Merovingian bloodline around the world as they navigated by stars in the sky. And spread their power right round the world, set up their trading routes. Ships, 5 of them, 5 oceans were named. 5 is the number of the fortress. For us, death. How did they channel the world to get 3? It's the sacred number of the Holy Triangle, which includes the 3 primary colors, 3 basic parts of sound, and 3 simple shapes. North and South America are pretty much shaped like triangles, much like a delta of a river is a rough triangle pyramid and sacred to the Illuminati way of thought. There are 2 continents that join in the sexual point of contact between the male and the female. It's literally at the country of Panama. Strong symbolism intended at Panama. Spelled P-A-N-A-M-A, Pan. Google Pan. See what you come up with. P is for Prince of Light, Tammuz, Horus. The A is for the sun god, the all-seeing eye, Nimrod, Ra, Osiris. An is connecting the two inverted triangles, just like North and South America, connecting the two continents. And MA, is the mother, the matrix womb. Semiramis, Isis, Mary. Spaceman back with more on A View from Space, coming up on AM 640, Toronto Radio. I'm the Spaceman. It's AM 640, Toronto Radio, and A View from Space. You can email me, by the way, at space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. Just one more thing. I had an email that put it precisely the way it is. North and South America. There are two Americas. North is the male, and South is the female. And they meet sexually joined at Panama. The Panama Canal is there. And Panama is the two inverted triangles coming together, being connected. It's the satanic trinity of Satan, Eve, and Cain. The Father and the Son are one. North America, connected to the Mother, South America. It all takes place at the sexual point of contact, the connection, the Panama Canal, in the heat of the tropics. And this symbolizes the vaginal canal, the female sexual anatomy. And every ship that slips through this canal is a sex ritual to the Illuminati. Keep in mind, this is not how I think. This is how the Luciferian mind sees it. Symbolism is everything to a soul void of compassion. Intellectualism means everything to a consciousness void of wisdom. You ever wondered at the reason most of the world changes to daylight savings time? Because they play with time too. This is the Masonic mindset. This is an absolutely ridiculous sun ritual that we do twice a year. It was first instituted way back in 1915. The idea of daylight time had been battered around for more than a century. Benjamin Franklin suggested the idea more than once in the 1770s while he was a minister to France, but it wasn't until more than a century later that the idea of daylight savings time was taken seriously. William Willett, an English writer, revived the idea in 1907, and 8 years later, Germany was the first nation to adopt daylight saving time. The reason? Energy conservation. And Britain quickly follows suit and institutes British summertime in 1916. Germany first. Britain follows immediately after. After all, in Buckingham Palace is a German family, Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, and that will explain that. In 2007, daylight savings time began earlier and will now end later in the United States and in most places in Canada too, as we are now in lockstep. George W. signed it into legislation calling for daylight savings time to start on the second Sunday in March, 3 weeks earlier than the traditional start. The bill also extends daylight savings time by a week to the first Sunday in November. We even state that we do it to get more daylight into our workday. But this causes way more problems to every society, as we're forced to spring ahead 1 hour and then fall back another hour 6 months later. Here's how it all really came about. Between 1835 and 1885, Canada built a national railroad system across the entire country. Sir Stanford Fleming was one of the top guys in overseeing this get done. Remember now, Sir Stanford Fleming. No small task if you're familiar with Canada at all, by the way, if you're listening to A View from Space right now somewhere in the world other than Canada on 640toronto.com with the live audio streaming. This is a huge country. But at the time, this Freemason, who was a founding member of the Royal Society of London, reached the Saskatchewan-Manitoba border. Those are a couple of provinces here in Canada. Somebody decided to name a small, tiny town in Saskatchewan after Mr. Sanford Fleming. The town's called Fleming, Saskatchewan. I'm from there. Not from Fleming, but from that province. The railroad continued on to the Pacific Ocean on the west coast, all the way from the east coast, but Mr. Fleming must have fallen in love with Saskatchewan. This is where he established Standard Time. Standard Time divided the entire world into 24 standard time zones. This was accomplished in 1878. This is the forerunner of Daylight Savings Time, established in Germany and Britain during the First World War in 16 and 17 in Britain, 1916 in Germany, 1917 in Britain. Now the whole world does this lunatic notion twice a year of moving clocks forward 1 hour, then 6 months later back to Standard Time. What's very interesting is this. Saskatchewan doesn't ever move its clocks. Ever. What's more, Saskatchewan is now blessed with the unique symbolic shape of a capless pyramid. And we're talking a big pyramid here. It's about 1,500 miles high and about 450 miles wide, that province. That's just to the capstone part of it. It's shaped like a big pyramid without the point, a straight line for the top. Add another 2,000 miles or so after that line is drawn, it peaks off at the North Pole, forming the pyramid. Now, what be so significant about this? The fact is that the whole world is now sectioned off into pyramids, or capless pyramids, through the lines of latitude and meridians of longitude. Why? Well, this is all Luciferian symbolism to divide the world into sacred geometry, even more because it guarantees, in their mind, a much better chance for the success of the plan if it's loaded with their symbolism. And of course you must be familiar with the railroad. This phrase describes the absolute control someone or something has over your affairs, which causes you to do something that you would rather choose not to do. Consider this like being railroaded into doing something. Rail, by the way, is liar when you put it in reverse, when you mirror the word. Rail backwards is liar. The railroad is an incredible piece of Luciferian symbolism. Even the construction of the railroad tracks themselves are symbolic of a geometric pattern of cross ties and iron rails that snake across the continent like a serpent. This is the exact instrument used to pull this huge tract of land, now known as Canada, together to become a country. The railroad. And, of course, a Commonwealth country. Very valuable. Wood, oil, metals of all kinds in the mines, wheat, everything you can imagine that you could sell to the world and build your empire. And let me just say this here as well, that the word railroad is full of magical symbolism itself. You have the R-A for Ra, the sun god. I-L-R-O. row for the connection again to the Royal Illuminati bloodline. And because of Sir Sandford Fleming's connection with the Royal Society of Canada, and of course symbolism of Freemasonry and dark occult symbolism throughout Canada's culture is huge. Ever Google the Manitoba legislature and Freemasonry? See what you get? And the tallest phallic obelisk in the world, at least for a few years, until it's just been surpassed by the Burj Dubai, was the CN Tower here in Toronto. That's the Canadian National Railway Tower. And eventually the Sky Dome, now known as the Rogers Centre, was built right on the base of the tower. This building opens up like an all-seeing eye for all kinds of sporting events and looks just like a feminine genitalia. And of course you know what the CN Tower is, an incredibly tall phallic symbol. Side by side. Five figures in the Great Lakes. The number 5 is incredibly strong symbolically to the Illuminati, as I've already talked about. The Pentagon, the most powerful building in the world. This is yet another example of the Luciferian mindset, creating 5 lakes when it set out to channel the world and create Atlantis. The main power center of Atlantis being the United States of America at this time, at this juncture. This is A View from Space, back with more in a moment on Control of the Masses on AM 640 Toronto Radio. I'm the guy that calls Space. This is AM 640 Toronto Radio. What I've been talking about is the Kabbalah's magical symbolism, and you'll notice there is a lot of sex interlaced in it. Think of Madonna, for example, on how she interlaces everything she does with sex, because you see, sex is such an integral part of the Kabbalah magical symbolism. After all, sex is what keeps the power in the family. The phallic symbol, the male penis, is what brings in the next generation. The female womb, the goddess, keeps bringing the power into the earth for the bloodline. Without children, your bloodline dies. Without offspring, your power base dies out. Now you understand the role sex has to play in the Kabbalah magical system. What sets this magic into motion is the gathering of the like-minded people together with a similar purpose or thought. This is called egregore. From this word we get the word congregation, where all will proclaim victory, and the killing and bloodshed will still continue on as before, until it's put to its diabolical end. This word egregore is a hidden concept which represents a thought form or collective group mind. It's what happens when a church congregation joins together to worship. Of course, this is so the Kabbalah magic can be performed. Some call it miracles. Some refer to it as signs and wonders. It's mind manipulation of physical matter in accordance with Luciferic principles is what it is, of creating an illusion. Other satanic groups which use this for powerful effect are sex cults that form a circle, join hands and do some chanting, get aroused and enjoy the orgasm. This is also acted out at concerts, sporting events, and things like that. The audience gathers around the stage, or the Sept. Set, by the way, is the old ancient Egyptian name for Satan. and they focus on the action occurring before them. The energy created at that event is massive. The hypnotic trance achieved is powerful. You've been to concerts, you know what I'm talking about. The resulting emotional crash is also devastating as the energy released at the event when it's over, and it's hard to recover from. Quite often at a religious crusade, people will be asked to join hands. Or the phenomenon that's performed at sporting events, they call the wave, where people throw their hands up in sequence to create a wave effect around the arena. It's the undulating motion of the serpent move. In ancient Rome, they used to talk about bread and circus, provided for the population to keep them sedated and in a state of stupidity and hypnosis, distraction. Today it's a perfected manipulation art form. Sports is an incredibly inextricable part of manipulating people's minds today. And Disneyland, the name of a major Illuminati bloodline family, Disney. Disneyland's a military industrial mind control complex. It was established by the FBI, by the 33rd degree Freemason J. Edgar Hoover and Walt Disney for mind control purposes. Former Musketeers will give you a hint at who and what happens. The Musketeers are the ones that aid in the Illuminati mind control of the world. Let me name a few Musketeers for you. Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, Lindsay Lohan. These are people constantly talked about in the news stories. This is not just some coincidence. They are the salesmen for the Illuminati's Luciferic rising of the Antichrist. We're all manipulated, really, by the manipulators, and in turn to be considered to be upstanding citizens. We're expected to go out and inspire others to be manipulated as well. As soon as we're finished school, we turn and have children and send our children to school. The blind leading the blind. And the blindfold, again, is more Freemason symbolism. They call it hoodwinked. And if you don't see through it, your life will be miserable. The royal elite bloodline with direct genetic bloodline links to demonic spirits are known throughout every civilization and every time period as the serpent race. Every time period, that is, except for one. You know which one it is? It's the one we're living in. We're educated, mind-controlled, to disbelieve the truth of what all civilizations have known for millennia. You only hear the truth now from, well, maybe shows like this that are not controlled but are not in the mainstream either. And on this show, you never even know what time it starts. The serpent race runs the world through their rich political, religious, and scientific aberrations, which most believe without question. Revelation 1:7 in the Bible says, "Behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye will see him. And they also which pierced him, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him." Chemtrails is what the clouds are. Those hideous clouds of poison, which are being distributed throughout the whole world now, and every eye does see them. These chemtrails are passed into the atmosphere by military jets under the disguise of being simple jet exhaust, vapor trails, contrails. They're not contrails. They are chemtrails. What you have here are a host of cancers, sedatives, heavy metals, molds, fungi. These poisonous agents are meant to sedate us, make us sick, or kill. There are many plagues to come that will be dispensed to the world through chemtrails. But people will believe that it's just in the air, or they won't know how they got it. These diabolical diseases that they have in the waiting, like Ebola and the Marburg disease, will eventually find their way into the chemtrailing, spraying us like animals going to slaughter. The purpose is to control life by controlling climate too, because chemtrails are also used to manipulate the climate. This has been a view from space on AM 640 Toronto Radio. Coast to Coast's next on Space. I'm out.